Okay, so I am very excited about this series that we're about to begin because this is one of the most important ones in my career. Not only in my career, but in me as a person as a whole. It has inspired so many things. I'm really excited to finally get into it. I can hardly wait. So why wait anymore? Hello everybody, how are you? I'm ARTE and welcome to this new episode where we'll be talking about Eragon by Christopher Paolini, the first book in the Inheritance Cycle. And yeah, this book has been extremely important for me. I am very excited to make this review. I really hope that you enjoy it because I will enjoy it. And of course, before we begin, these two here are available on Amazon. I'm not sure when this will come out, but on the 15th of August, an announcement will either come out, is coming out, or came out regarding what will follow these two, so please check it out. It'll be in my Instagram, which is down here below, so thank you so much for all your support there. Yeah, let's go ahead and do the P.A.O, the Possibles Malediction. Its acronym is in Spanish, and let's begin. The P.A.O for this book is gonna be it could be better. It's good, but it could be better, so I'll give it a 7, a 7.5, okay? So now that we have that settled, let's begin right ahead. Let's go with Christopher Paolini's life. Christopher Paolini was born in 1983, and he was always, from the beginning, he was homeschooled. So he was homeschooled, and he developed a great love for literature from a very young age. Both of his parents worked at a publishing industry, so they gave him a lot of things to read from a very young age, which really influenced him. And because of his homeschooling, he finished high school at the age of 15, which gave him quite a bit of a gap of years to work on something before he entered college. He decided to use this gap to begin working on a love letter, a thank you letter to the fantasy genre, which he had really loved throughout his life. Some of his favorite authors, the ones that inspired him the most, were of course Grandpa Tolkien, but other than him, also Ursula Le Guin and Frank Herbert from Dune. So he had very big inspirations, also Raymond de Feast, I believe, and those inspirations really got him into writing. So at the age of 15, as soon as he graduated high school, he began working on this project that would eventually become a huge series. However, because he wrote it when he was very young and it was his first thing that he wrote, I'm not sure if it was his first thing, but it was one of the earlier things that he wrote, the project turned out to be pretty much very similar to the first movie of Star Wars, which had come recently, and of course, as he grew up with Star Wars, he was a very big fan, so he drew a lot of things from the script and eventually translated them into the fantasy world. So this project turned out to be Eragon, the first book in the Inheritance Cycle, which he loved so much when he finished it that he told his parents that he needed to publish it. So, because they had a publishing house, of course they did it. He did the original cover for the book, and then he also worked on the other artwork, like the map. I believe there's also some artwork at the end, which he also did. Yeah, here it is. This is Saphira's Eye, and all of this he drew himself. So he was a very good drawer, other than just an author. He did the first cover for the book, and it got published in 2002. After he published the book, he began touring across many schools across the US. I believe it was around 135 schools that he toured. And during the whole tour, he wore these clothes, which, as you can see, are very interesting and immediately draw attention to him. So he made all these tours where he talked about writing and he talked about his book and gave it as much merchandising as he could. And eventually the book came to the nephew of a very famous author of the time, a journalist, and this journalist picked up the book because his nephew loved it and gave it to the publishing house of Knopf, which was a publishing house with which he worked. And Knopf eventually liked the book and offered Christopher to buy it, and in 2003 the second edition came out, this one by Knopf, and they would eventually continue publishing the whole series. And by the age of 19, Christopher Paolini became the youngest best-selling author of a big fantasy series. So the books were very successful. In the year 2005, Book 2, Eldest, came out. It was also very successful. The year after that, the movie adaptation also came out, and even though the movie adaptation wasn't as great as people expected it to be. It got fairly bad reviews. It still helped a lot with the series as a whole. So in the year 2008, Brissinger, the third book of the series, came out, and originally what Christopher had planned was to make a trilogy of books, because everybody loved trilogies. However, he decided, by the time he finished Brissinger, he realized that he needed another book to finish the story. So in 2011, he published Inheritance, the last book in the Inheritance cycle. However, he always expressed his desire to keep this story going, to go into something else after the Eragon story concluded. And in 2018, this happened with The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, which is a small, like 4.5 book in the series, which will lead into future books. However, between 2011 and 2018, or 2016, I believe, he took a break from writing and dedicated himself to his life, because from the age of 15 he had been writing a lot, so he needed some free time. And eventually in 2016 he began working again on another project, which would be published until 2020 in the form of To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, which was his love letter to the science fiction genre, which also helped him a lot. So this is pretty much his life up until now. To Sleep in a Sea of Stars also gave birth to the Fractalverse, the huge universe of future books that he plans on writing, and I am very excited about it as well. So he now is planning to write, I believe, book 5 for the Inheritance cycle, or the so-called book 5. We don't have a title for it yet, and more books inside this Fractalverse of his. So that's all with it. We can officially begin talking about this book here, about the plot. So let's go. So let's talk about the plot of this book. The Eragon story, first we need to understand that when Christopher Paolini wrote this book, he was a great fan of Star Wars, and he was also very young. So as it happens with young authors, he took a lot of inspiration from the things that he loved and turned them into his own story. He pretty much copy-pasted and then kind of painted on top of it. And this happened mostly in his first book. After that, when he grew up, he changed things for the rest of his story, as happens with authors. So the Eragon story is pretty much episode 4 from Star Wars. So it follows Eragon, who is this boy who discovers a dragon egg, and the dragon egg hatches, and he is chosen to be the new dragon rider. But this occurs in a world where dragon riders have been exterminated by an evil emperor called Galbatorix. So Galbatorix is this huge emperor who has taken over the world, and Eragon becomes the last hope to take him down. So he begins this journey with a man from his village called Braum, and they begin to travel to find the Varden, which is like the rebel group that is trying to take down Galbatorix. And on the way there, they will encounter many things that will be both bad for them or good for them. Eragon will begin his training as a magician, as a dragon rider, and he'll have to face many dangers, such as Durza, a Shade, or the Razak, which are also huge monsters. So this is pretty much the plot for book 1. It is the simplest of the 4 books. It is also very cool. I really liked it. And yeah, it's essentially a reimagining of the Star Wars script, but in a fantasy world, which works, but also takes away a little merit. But we also have to take into consideration that he was 15 when he wrote this book, so he was very young. Now, into my review, to just make it very quick. I have to go, sorry. I'm really excited about this review, but I have to go. So, the plot for this book, I really like it. Of course, it doesn't have the merit of other stories because it is pretty much a copy of episode 4. However, having been written by a 15-year-old, it makes it very successfully. Towards the ending, there are variations that I really like, that I really appreciate. You really start seeing how, towards the ending of this book, Christopher Paolini began to deviate from the idea from George Lucas's idea, and he did it very successfully. The ending of the story is very strong, and it sets up many things for the rest of the story. I really enjoy the ending and overall the whole plot. It is very well structured. However, it is not the strong point. The strong thing about this book is definitely going to be the characters, especially Eragon and Saphira. One of the main plot points of this story is learning how Eragon and Saphira relate with each other, how their interactions grow because they are dragon and rider. And that is a very important theme of these books, how the dragons and the riders, how they interact with one another. And that is something that I really like about this story, how Christopher Paolini builds the relationship between Eragon and Saphira in such a deep way. Eragon as a character alone is cool, and Saphira as a character alone is also cool, but together they make a very interesting relationship that I really love, and I think is one of the strongest points of the series. That is also one of the things that puts it apart, sets it apart from Star Wars. That in Star Wars you have only Luke. In this story you have Luke and Luke's dragon, so that also changes the dynamic a little. It's a very, very, very interesting story. I really like the characters. Brom, Mortug, Arya, they are cool characters in this book, but they are not really that important. Well, Brom is a little more important. Brom is characterized a lot in the first half of the story. However, when he really becomes very dominant is in books 3 and 4, that even though he is not there, he doesn't appear much in those books, you do see a lot of the impact that could only appear in those books because of the characterization he had in this story. You also have Mortug and Arya, which is pretty much the same with them. You do not see them as strong as characters in the beginning. However, in their next books, they will become very strong and important characters. So that is also amazing about this story, and I really like it. The characters are by far the strongest point in this book series, and here it is a great introduction to them. The narrative is also very, very interesting. Christopher Paolini writes in a way that is easy to follow. As you can see that he knows how to write, that he has read a lot, because even though this is his first novel, it is written in a way that is very easy to follow, that is very easy to comprehend, and that also entices the reader into reading more. So it is a very, very well done narrative. Of course, he perfects it as he goes on. Inheritance is by far stronger than Eragon, because by Inheritance, Christopher has grown a lot. However, Eragon being the first one, it has a decent narrative. Not great, but it is very decent, and it allows the reader to go with the story. And now into the world building. I really think that the world building for this book is very cool. Of course, it's nowhere near as vast as, let's say, The Lord of the Rings or The Wheel of Time or Malazan. It is not that big, but it is a decent amount of world building, especially in the language. The language in these books, the languages are very interestingly explored, and I really like the concept of the magical language being also the language of the elves. So it's an interesting concept. It would be a nightmare to be an elf in this book because everything you say is a curse, pretty much. It's a spell, so everything you say, you have to be very careful with your words. However, the world building here, it is not as vast as with other stories, but for a story with this audience, I think it is a decent amount of world building. And it is definitely a great introduction to more of the epic fantasy, like The Wheel of Time or Brandon Sanderson with Stormlight Archive. It is a very nice introduction to those kinds of stories, and the world building makes it also very easy to follow. So I think it's a great story, a great introduction to more complex and demanding stories with a bigger learning curve. It is very well done, done by a 15-year-old on top of that, so I really enjoy this story. I will give it a 73 out of 100. It's a great story, I really love it, and if you can check it out, please do. So this will be my review for Eragon, 73 out of 100. I really hope that you enjoy it. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment if you like. Also, check out my books. There's this announcement on my Instagram, 15th of August. So check it out. It's going to be very cool. And thank you so much for all your help. I will see you later. Goodbye.